Hello, welcome to my channel, or welcome back if you've been here before. My name is Beth Ann. Today I was, I guess, inspired to make a booktube video because I have two library books that I need to return. See if I can get the glare not on them. I don't know if they'll be, looks like maybe they'll be backwards in the video, but that's okay. We have A Tip for the Hangman by Allison Epstein and Boss Witch by Anne Aguirre. I'm not really sure how to say her last name. But anyway, these are two books I got from the library. My strategy in the library these days is that my daughter doesn't really want to go to the library very often because she has a ton of books at home, because I have a book buying problem and a little free library problem. And so when she does go to the library, one of the things that gets her excited about it is that she gets to pick books for me to read. So she actually picked some good ones. These are ones that I would have been perfectly happy to pick out and read on my own, but she picked them for me. She also picked one other one that I ended up not reading. It was a sort of thing that I probably would have enjoyed just fine, but just based on the blurb and the title and everything, it wasn't something I wanted to prioritize over other books that I own and should be reading. So anyway, I read these two. So let's start with A Tip for the Hangman by Allison Epstein. This is historical fiction about Kit Marlowe, the famous English playwright who was writing, I guess, in the late 1500s. And I know there's a whole bunch of backstory there that Shakespeare lovers get really into. He predated Shakespeare by a little bit. So like Shakespeare is an extremely minor character that shows up once or twice in this book. I think there's some theories out there that like Kit Marlowe maybe actually was Shakespeare eventually. And then there's also, I think, some theories that people have. I don't know how legitimate or strongly based in the evidence these are. Some theory that Kit Marlowe might have been a spy for the crown. And so that's what this book is about, is Kit Marlowe is a down on his luck. Well, not really down on his luck. He comes from a very unprivileged background, and is a student trying to make it work at Cambridge, and is sort of plucked from being a nobody but a good student into this world of espionage and intrigue. So it was definitely very exciting because you're reading a spy novel. So there was a lot of like, what's going to happen to Kit? Is he going to be okay? There's a love story for Kit, which is really, really lovely and sweet. And so we kind of see his life balancing his creative pursuits as a playwright and balancing this life of danger and secrecy as a spy for the crown. So it was very enjoyable. It was very fast paced. It was the sort of book where I didn't really want to put it down. This is Pookie. Pookie, say hi. So definitely very enjoyable. Overall, I felt like the writing was really strong. There were some pieces where the writing was really beautiful. The one thing about this book that keeps it from being a 5-star for me was that even though it was so compelling, there was still something about the main characters where they fell a little bit flat as people. Like they just weren't fully fleshed out for me. So that goes for Kit, and that goes for his lover, Tom, who's with him for his entire life that we see in this book. But they both just... They both just kind of felt like moved along by the plot, if that makes sense. It's a very plot-heavy book, and I do tend to appreciate books that are more character-driven and focusing on the characters and their interior lives, and so we get very little of that for my particular reading tastes in this book. But other than that, it was really fun to read, sometimes a little stressful. So I definitely would recommend it to folks, just not going to be one of my favorite books for that reason. All right, then the other library book I mentioned is Boss Witch. So this is part of a fantasy series, I believe. I don't know how many books are in the series. I think this is the second one. I think the first one was called Witch Please, if I remember correctly. Yeah. So cute titles, right? And these are fun, modern romances that are about witches who live amongst us in hiding. So they have kind of secret covens. In this one, the coven is masquerading as a book club, which is really cute. And, you know, they're just people living their lives, using magic to help themselves out. The main character, Clem, and her cousin own a like appliance repair shop, and so they repair appliances with magic and do a great job, and that's their living. So they live in a fairly small town in Wisconsin. And the main thrust of the book is that, they're just kind of going about their lives, but there are also witch hunters in this modern day and time. And Clem's cousin, I think her name is Danica, if I'm getting that correct. Anyway, let's go with Danica. Danica was the protagonist in the first book in this series, and so she's been going through some personal upheaval and has been finding romance, and so apparently her magic has been spiking a little bit out of control, and so the normal wards that these witches use to keep their presence secret and undetectable haven't held up to those spikes of magic. And so a witch hunter arrives in town. His name's Gavin, and he's a very sexy British man, because the witch hunters are primarily a British order, it turns out. So he's arrived in town, and there's, instant sparks flying between Clem and Gavin. Clem is sort of a protector type of personality, and so she's trying to protect her coven. And the best thing that she can come up with is to try to distract him and play for time by basically seducing him, by trying to flirt with him and seduce him. So that he, is kind of distracted from looking around in this small town. And then she'll presumably kind of break his heart a little bit, and he'll move on and be on his way. So that, of course, doesn't proceed entirely as planned because it's a romance novel, right? So the sparks are flying and the two of them are falling for each other. They don't know each other's history, really. So obviously Gavin doesn't pick up on the fact that Clem is one of the witches he's seeking until quite late in the novel. And Clem is assuming that Gavin is a bloodthirsty, ruthless witch hunter, when in reality he's actually someone who's really struggling with the ethics of that line of work, and his own sort of past and training, and is looking for a different life. So obviously it's a romance novel. You can see where it goes. So it was very light and fun. There were definitely some pieces that I felt, I'm going to say unbelievable. It's about witches in the modern world. Of course it's unbelievable. But like at one point, the coven is freaking out because this witch hunter is in town, and they just very quickly move from the immediate like disaster, doom and gloom into like lighthearted joking about the situations. There were a couple moments like that where I was like, that doesn't really play well. Like it took me out of the story just a little bit. Even though it's a light romance novel, I would have expected just a little bit more like angst in that moment. So there were a few moments like that where some of the possibility for some of those like stronger, I don't want to say stronger, what's stronger than love, right? But some of those more troubling or more troubled parts of the plot didn't feel like they were given fully the weight that they deserved. And again, it's supposed to be a light, fluffy romance novel, so I shouldn't really be kind of kicking it for that reason. I think maybe that's me as a fantasy reader thinking like, I wanted to know more about like the witches and have that aspect be like treated more seriously, right? And be like a bigger part of the novel, but it's really about the romance. So anyway, so it was very enjoyable. I would not hesitate to pick up more in this series or by this writer, because it was really well done and really enjoyable. She also does the romance pieces very well. There's definitely a lot of like mutual consent from the two people. There's like open discussion about their needs and wants and things like that. There is some sex on the page, but it's not like super graphic. So I thought all of that was like very well done and kind of modern in all the right ways, right? So yeah, those are my two recent library reads. And Pookie likes it when I have library books that I can't put down, because then we snuggle and read my books. So, all right. Let me know if you've read either of these books. Be really curious to hear what others think. And I will see you all in the next video. Thanks. Bye.